President Trump pauses during a meeting with congressional leaders and administration officials on tax reform in the Roosevelt Room of the White House on September 5, 2017. From left, House Speaker Paul D. Ryan, Republican Wisconsin, Trump, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, RKY, and Representative Kevin Brady, Republican Texas. Evan Vucci AP. As long as there has been a federal income tax, taxpayers have been able to deduct most of the state and local taxes they pay from earnings subject to Uncle Sam's grasp. But that deduction, especially popular in states rich in Democratic voters, could disappear as soon as next year if President Trump and congressional Republicans succeed in their promised rewrite of the tax code. The state and local tax deduction, or SALT, has long been a target for tax policy wonks who see it as an unwise federal subsidy that is mainly claimed by the wealthy. But politics have always intervened. Thanks to the opposition of lawmakers in high-tax states, the deduction has survived every effort to clear out loopholes, including the last federal tax overhaul of similar ambition in 1986. Now, Republican leaders have made clear the SALT is on the table, and it has shaken up a number of blue state GOP legislators who are warning that it could derail the ambitious tax plan Trump is now pushing. "I intend to fight it with everything I know how," said Representative Tom MacArthur, RNJ, who represents a district where 43% of tax filers claim the SALT and signed a bipartisan letter to Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin urging him to preserve the break. "It's a big deal for states like ours. The incentives to eliminate, or at least chip away, at the deduction could be impossible for congressional tax writers to ignore." Republicans are hoping to drive down both individual and corporate tax rates using special congressional procedures that will require their plan to not increase the deficit in the long term. Doing so means offsetting the costs of rate cuts by closing loopholes, and few of them yield more revenue than the SALT last year. The Congressional Joint Committee on Taxation estimated its cost to the Treasury at $368 billion through 2020, and the Congressional Budget Office reported that simply capping the deduction would cut deficits by $955 billion over a decade. The other individual tax provisions whose elimination could generate close to that revenue are even more politically sacred, including the favored treatment for retirement savings, employer-paid health care premiums, investment income and mortgage interest. "It's really hard to envision tax reform that's worth writing home about, that's done revenue neutrally, without including this," said Ryan Ellis, a conservative tax lobbyist. "It's very, very difficult to envision how you would piece it together. We've taken so many hits on everything else." That is a reference to the demise of other potential pay-fors to offset the GOP's rate cuts, including a border adjustment tax on corporate expenses. That proposal, favored by House Speaker Paul D. Ryan, Republican Wisconsin, might have raised $1 trillion over 10 years but generated fierce opposition from some businesses. Now Ryan, who is eyeing the SALT, has made the conservative policy case for eliminating the deduction at a September 7 event hosted by the New York Times. People in states that have balanced budgets, whose state governments have done their job and kept their books balanced and don't have big massive pension liabilities, they're effectively paying for states that don't, he said. "What it is a fairness issue. Let's let people see their true cost of government. The deduction clearly favors states where taxes are relatively high, and where incomes are high enough that it is worthwhile for taxpayers to itemize their deductions and claim it." According to the Conservative Tax Foundation, filers in 6 states, California, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Texas, and Pennsylvania, claim more than half of the dollar value of the deduction. With the exception of Texas, those states are overwhelmingly represented by Democrats, but the handful of Republicans, mainly in the House, are threatening a revolt if the GOP tax plan is balanced on their constituents. Representative Peter T. King, RNY, who represents a middle-class Long Island district, said he could never vote for a tax bill that eliminated the deduction, especially for property taxes. "These people have 60 by 100 foot plots, They're paying about $15,000 a year in property taxes, high state income taxes, not into Wall Street, not into stocks and bonds, he said. It would be devastating. These are Trump voters. They didn't vote for him to take away the deduction on their main asset. Both King and MacArthur doubted the GOP bill would be able to reduce rates enough to offset the cost of losing the deduction. And even if it did, they said, that would hardly suffice. They may leave my residents at a break even while the rest of the country enjoys tea.